Well, greetings and salutations, folks. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to this second bonus. Before we jump into tonight's second bonus, a couple quick links. As many of you may know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons. Narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click the bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter and are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to this second night bonus upload. What I meant to say was second of the night bonus upload. Let's jump into it. And came across one that was very, very interesting. I ended up contacting the gentleman. He is in his late 60s and has an encounter that he wanted to share. He's been wanting to share it for quite some time. He reached out to a predominant author in the field of cryptozoology that he thought would be interested in sharing his experience in one of his books. The guy never got back to him, and then he approached my channel and one other channel. I was the first one to get in contact with him. The author he tried to contact was about 2 or 3 years ago. He has been watching numerous YouTube channels, and the reason why he chose mine and the other channel was because we're very similar in the aspect that we both go outside and we both look into the areas where these experiences have happened. But what pushed him to contact me was about 2.5 weeks ago. I did an experience out of California at a national park in California where there was a very, very large, giant / Nephilim creature. His experience takes place in Banff National Forest in Canada. And prior to him and I going into his experience, he said, "Do you ever wonder if you look at Canada and its national parks and its mountain ranges, they have strange names, especially in Banff. There's a place called Ghost River, and there's a place called Spectral Peak. Now, we all know about Nahanni Valley or Nahanni National Park Reserve, aka Headless Valley, where the Wahila supposedly lurks and hunts humans and decapitates them." He was very kind of off about wanting to share because he said, what I'm going to tell you is absolutely 100% true. It happened in 1991. But to this day, I still have a hard time processing what happened to me and my friends while we were rock climbing in Vermilion Range, which is in Banff National Park. He and some friends had been camping and rock climbing or scaling the faces of these ridges in this range in Vermilion. So I said, I don't judge people on what they tell me. Please, don't feel like I'm going to judge you, belittle you in any way. As you know, I said to him that I've shared a giant experience. I talk about Dogman. And he's familiar with the channel. He's listened to Luke. He's listened to all these other people that I've had on. And he said that he truly believes that what Victor said about other countries not having teams like we have in the States, because Canada had to handle this internally. The incident was labeled as a wolf attack in 91, which you'll soon see why it is so strange. So we're going to call this man Charles. He and 4 of his friends, there was a party of 5, had been in Banff National Forest for about 2 weeks. He said, we were doing extreme sports before extreme sports were a thing. We would mountain climb some of the, most dangerous ridges and ranges in Canada. They were young, and what do you do when you're young? You don't have addiction issues or anything like that. You do have an addiction. It's called adrenaline junkies. Now, they had pretty much gone across this area from Sawback up into the Vermilion range. Like I said, they were there for about 2 weeks, just camping, rock climbing, hiking, and really having the time of their lives. This was probably going to be their last hurrah, because 2 of their friends were moving on in their lives with jobs and such. So they get to this one range, very, very peaked area in Vermilion Range. And there's some really sheer ridges there and some pretty massive cave systems. They had not had any kind of strangeness go on. They heard their wildlife, caribou doing these strange calls that was haunting. He said, it'd be a haunting. He said nature sounds, the natural nature sounds are haunting enough. But it was a great time. So they get to this Vermilion Range. All 5 of them. They had camped out. They were going to go up the face of this ridge first thing in the morning. And what they were going to do was they were going to set up camp at the top and then go kind of across and down. They had about another week left of their excursion. They kept, as they were climbing the face, they would hear these kind of strange noises that didn't coincide with the natural nature noises that they were hearing for years prior. I mean, they'd been doing stuff like this for years. And at one point, they decide to, hey, maybe we should figure out what this noise is that we're hearing. Maybe it's a mountain lion. They obviously knew it was not bear. So as they descend this ridge a little ways, there's some dense forest and water systems all throughout this area where they are. One of the guys sees something and gets really panicked and says, I think we got to go. I think we should, start backtracking the way we came and possibly move rather quickly. Of course, everyone the 4 other people are like, what do you mean? What did you see? And he just said that he had seen this human, but it was at least twice the size of a human, peer out from this cave just above and to the side of them. So as they're descending this ridge, he looks over and sees this cave and sees this kind of head pop out and look. They kind of make fun of him a little bit, and Charles remembers saying, maybe you're overexerting yourself tonight or today. Let's take tonight, rest up. None of us had seen it. So, and this guy was not known to be a story maker or anything like that. These guys they grew up together. And like I said, they've been doing this stuff for a while. So they set their camp up, and there's this little kind of water system that they're by, and they are right in the middle of these sheer mountain ranges. And they had been on the mountain or the face of the mountain or range they were climbing was called Panther Mountain, which made them kind of say, hey, maybe what you saw was a mountain lion. Let's camp here. Let's get, set up, have some dinner, and we'll figure it all out. So the night starts off. They start their fire. They all had MREs with them that they had, hiking MREs and stuff like that. Patagonia makes some. They didn't make them back then, but, and not military, but recreational. And so they're having their dinner and their tents are set. The guy who had spotted something starts to calm down a little. Now, as the night closes, they're like, all right, let's crash out. They all had these singular one-man tents designed for mountain climbing and stuff like that. They all get in their tents and crash out for the night. He doesn't remember the exact time, but it was quite some time before morning that they hear this kind of loud shriek and this sickening splat and moaning. Now, they all get out of their tents and they see one of their friends' tents over by a tree, and they're like, what the hell? And they yell out to him, are you okay? You know, hey, what? Are you okay? There's no response, and it's dark. There's a small glow from the coals of the fire. They have flashlights, but we're talking 1990 era flashlights. Not bright, but bright enough. They're kind of scanning the area. They walk over to the tent and they see just this massive amount of blood in the tent. And their friend was deceased. It looked like he had been crushed. There was a lot of there was his eyes, his face, just a lot of damage to his body. They all start panicking, like, what the hell did this? We're thinking it's a mountain lion, but now obviously it's not. We were kind of thinking, hey, maybe our buddy. And now the guy that saw this humanoid person, giant, look out this cave system on this ridge, puts it together and says, I think what I saw did this. And around that point of time, not at that exact second, but around that point of time, as they're being loud, they're trying to figure out what happened to their friend. This human-like man thing steps out from the woods. And the way Charles explained it was, this thing was massive, Jeff. It was massive. It was larger than two men stacked on top of each other, which average man is what, 5'11"? So he said his estimate was somewhere between 14 to 16 feet tall. It was just massive. It did have sporadic hair on its body. I said, was it a Bigfoot? Do you think it was a Bigfoot? And he said, I don't think this was a Bigfoot because it had hair. It had a very human-esque like face. And it had what appeared to be like skins of animal around its waist, like a loincloth. And he said, I know how this sounds, Jeff. It sounds crazy, but I've held on to this for years, and it gets crazier. All of a sudden, four of them are like, looking at this monstrosity, and they all take off running away from it, obviously, and leaving the body of their friend in this one-man tent behind. They're not thinking of him at this point. They're thinking of their own lives and safety. They're running through this pine forest. It gives chase, and it's on their heels, and they are hauling ass. And it's not, you know, it's probably doing a fraction of its natural speed. He ends up falling. And this thing walks, his three friends just keep running. He falls. And this giant man walks up on him and stares down at him. And he can see, you know, it's got these just huge eyes. It's got human-like teeth. It's very human looking. Except it looks like a throwback, you know. And it's just huge. And it steps on his leg. And he hears just this terrible noise and immense pain. It looks down at him as it steps on his leg, like it intentionally knew what it was doing, and continued to walk, or pretty much walk chasing his friends. It had crushed his femur. And he knew at that point, he said, I thought I was going to die. He said, the amount of pain I was feeling. He said, I knew that if I didn't get medical attention, that I was going to die. The thing kind of went. He couldn't hear it. He couldn't see it. He's lying there in the dark. He's trying to pull himself back to find an area where he can, you know, maybe find cover, hide from this thing. And probably a half hour to an hour goes by, and two of his friends kind of come up behind him, and chance meeting, but they kind of circled back to find him when they realized, you know, are you okay? What the hell was that thing? How did you hurt your leg? And he kind of fills him in as quick as possible. And he says, you know, where's our other friend? And he said, as we were running, we were communicating, we realized you weren't with us. So he said, I'm going to continue running. You guys go back and find Charles. At that point, they look at the damage that's done. He's not going anywhere. Even if they wanted to carry him, drag him, he's done at that point. And they know that, you know, if they don't get medical attention, that he might die. So they find this kind of outcropping, and they pull him in, and they get in there. It's about 4 foot in height, about 20 feet back, and pretty secure. Obviously, this giant man thing is not going to be able to get in there. And they make the decision of one of them is going to stay with Charles, and one of them is going to go find their other friend, and they're going to take that 3-day trek to get to civilization and get help. They have no idea, you know, people weren't talking about Nephilim. You know, they knew that this thing was an oddity, but obviously a giant. And the guy that they all agreed on to go was the fastest, strongest of the 3 that were there. Obviously, Charles not going anywhere, so, you know, he's the fastest of the 2 that can go and run. And, he says, all right, I am going to mark where I am, and I am going to go and get help. I will get help. And he takes off. It's just starting to get morning. Night has just faded, and it's just kind of peaking. So throughout the next couple of days, him and his friend are in this sheltered area. They did hear noise off in the distance, what they believed was this giant thing walk by, not directly in front of the cave. They didn't see it. They didn't see its leg go by. I was like, did this thing like come at you again? Did it, they could hear it, mainly at night. Like it knew that they were still out there. And of course, as they're in this very shallow cave, they're talking about their friend that had been crushed. And 2 or 3 days go by, and he's now feeling the internal damage, blood loss. He tells his friend, I'm not going to make it. Tell my parents that I love them and that I'm sorry if you get out of here. But I'm not. I can, I'm cold. I feel like I'm dying. And he now knows what happened to his 2 friends, because obviously they've spoken throughout the years. Well, the 2 friends end up crossing paths about a day later. They both have the same idea. The one that led the thing away, and the friend that circled back to get Charles. They end up meeting back up, and they get to civilization, and they contact the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They proceed to tell the RCMP what happened. They are kind of looked at funny, and one is forced to stay behind and grilled and questioned about what are you talking about, this giant man that, and the friend that had circled back had told them, I left them here. I know where they are. I marked the area as I was running. And the RCMP had assembled a search party for them. During that time, the guy who had been left behind in the headquarters of the RCMP is now being questioned rather extensively. And he is being questioned by Canadian Security Intelligence, which they are like, what did you see? Where did you see this? Were there more than one? Asking him just random questions. But really constant, not giving him any breaks, not giving him any kind of food, water, nothing for a long time period as they're grilling this man. Mind you, he just came out of the woods running from this monstrosity that killed his friend and probably killed his other 2 friends. He doesn't know. So as the Canadian Security Intelligence Service is, grilling this guy, he's telling him, hey, this thing is huge. This thing is it's going to kill whoever goes up to get my friends out of there if they're still alive. You need to, send more Royal Canadian Mounted Police up there. It's not gonna... The search party team goes up and they end up finding Charles and his friend. This is where Charles said, I feel like people may not believe what I'm going to say, because yes, people have talked about these giants and people talk about cryptids, but what we experienced those few nights waiting for that search party was something that we had never seen or were prepared for and he's never heard of from then till now. So during the daytime, as they're waiting for this search party, his friend had gathered sticks and kind of had made a fire separating them from this entrance to help keep Charles warm, help keep him, some light going on, and have some safety and security. So they had this rather narrow but 20 feet deep cave system that they're in. Not even a cave system, because it's not a system. It was just this 20 feet deep cave. And at the entrance, it was about 4 foot high, and it kind of narrowed out to where they were in the back of this cave, but they weren't all the way in the back, because it did get too narrow for anyone to crawl back there. So they had room behind them and room in front of them, and so that he had started this fire to keep warm and have light and have security. He had also walked back to where his friend and their campsite was set up, looking for provisions. And when he went back, the tents were trampled. It looked like, this thing had just stepped on all of them. And the one with his friend in it was no longer there. He did grab one of their backpacks that had a couple of MREs, some basic supplies, a knife, stuff to start the fire with. And he said, that thing had been back and our friend is not there. So now they're dealing with that mentally. The night before the search team gets to them, they can hear, this thing walking around the forest, and they hear these deep howls. Right before daybreak comes, as they hear these howls, they get the fire. Their buddy gets the fire going, and it's kind of like a barrier. Smoke's rolling out of the cave. and they see what appears to be 2 wolves come up to the cave system, or this cave hole, the cave entrance. And they get to where the fire is and start to growl. Only one can go so far. And it's trying to get in, but the fire is there. Charles's friend is, throwing rocks at it. The only way it would be able to get to Charles and his friend is if it went through the fire. And the fire was large enough to keep it at bay. When the security team, or the search and rescue team, comes out the next morning and finds them, they see the fire smoke. Their friend had marked the area. And they get out. They start really isolating and putting medical attention to Charles. And he is saying to his friend to tell the friend that went back to get him about the wolves. Tell him about the wolves. And he's looking around, and he sees tracks, but what he sees are what appears to be palms and almost like feet that are quadruped, and then at some portions bipedal. So they're not out of the woods yet, because, mind you, it takes days to get in and out of where they were. The RCMP obviously has firearms, long rifles. And they start their trek back. By the time they had gotten going, it was almost dusk. And at around 11, maybe midnight, they took a break for the night, and they were going to push on, because, mind you, they had been traveling through. That night, they are ambushed by these 2, air quotes, wolves. Wolves attack. That's how it's labeled in 91. 1 death. They end up shooting one of the dogmen. And he said, I know, Jeff, that, because I'm listening to him and I'm quiet. And he said, you don't believe me, do you? And I said, I'm just listening to you. I don't want to cut you off. The RCMP shoots one, killing it, possibly wounding the other. They then get to the area where they can get a helicopter, a medevac, in and out, because that was the plan. We'll get to this one area, we'll get a helicopter, and we'll go get him to the hospital. They drag the dogman that they had killed. The RCMP contacted someone. Charles and the 2 guys don't know. Obviously, they're out of the loop on all of this. During that period of time, Charles is now there in civilization. He doesn't know what happened to the dogman. He doesn't know what happened to anything. But he after talking to his friends, because he's in the hospital, and he almost did die. They said if you were out there and at least another 2 nights, you probably wouldn't be here. Your friend saved your life. But the 3 other friends were now being interrogated by this Canadian Security Intelligence Service, the RCMP, and as they're being interrogated, a person comes in from Canadian Special Operations and questions them, and they don't see them guys anymore. They were questioned and they left. Charles is out of the loop on all of this, but his 3 friends are held up in a undisclosed location because they don't know where they are at the point. He's on the mend, but he's also handcuffed to the hospital bed. And he has 2 Royal Canadian Mounted Police outside of his hospital room. During that time, he is visited by 2 gentlemen from the Department of National Defense, which is Canada's head of the government, the head of the National Defense, Homeland Security, I guess, maybe would be my guess. And questioned about the giant, and questioned about the Dogman that was killed. What did you see? What happened? And they questioned him for about 6 to 7 hours as he's lying in his hospital bed. They had taken his pain medication, his morphine, away from him during this time so he could feel the pain. They did essentially torture the guy. And they said, we'll be back. And they leave. He has not had any visitors. Nobody knows where he is. And he's on the mend. He's transferred to a Canadian National Defense hospital where he stays there for 3 to 4 months. He is taken care of, and he has his PT. It was almost, 2 or 3 months before he could even walk on that leg. It's still, to this day, not right. He says he's 2 inches shorter on that one side. During that whole process of having physical therapy and everything, no one knows where he is. His family, his mom and dad don't know where he is. He doesn't know if his friends are okay. He's asking. And they won't tell him. No one tells him a thing. Almost a full year goes by. Because after he had about a 70% recovery and could walk with a cane, he was then held and not questioned about it anymore. Not every time he spoke about it when people came to talk to him, or, they just told him, this is national security. This is something you cannot ever talk about. If you want to leave, you have to, adhere and follow what we are going to tell you. And that goes on during this time for a couple of months. He's not getting anything. Time goes by and they all meet up about a year later. The one friend who came back and then ran back out and then came back with the rescue team, he will not talk to any of the three friends, Charles and his other two friends that were there. Mind you, these people grew up together. And the other two had told Charles what happened to them. Pretty much the same thing, except they were not, hospitalized and doing physical therapy, but they were questioned, especially the guy who stayed back with Charles, extensively about what you saw that night before being rescued. The other guy who had been held, he didn't see the Dogman, just Charles, the guy that stayed with him in the cave, and the guy who came back with the search and rescue team. They were the only three that saw it. So the one guy that had been left behind to, answer all the questions and stuff in the initial part, he was never questioned about the Dogman. And what happened at the time of their release. So these threats were pushed on all of these guys, if you ever talk about what you saw, what you endured, we will not only imprison you, but we will hold your family, whether it be your parents or when you are older and you own your own home and have a family of your own, we will take your family's belongings, your home, under some Canadian constitution that allows the government to just take property without even paying people. They can just take it. If this information is ever, leaked out, you will be punished. Your family will be punished. Crown land or something like that, he said, which they own like 80-something% of all land the government does in Canada. So, but he's pretty sure that during that time when the RCMP had killed that Dogman, and then when the Canadian Security Intelligence came in to the other people, and then when the Department of National Defense came to him, that the special operations were, brought in and probably went up and killed that giant. And the Dogman, maybe, they don't know. They do know that their friend's body has never been recovered. And it was reported in 91 as a wolf attack and consumption. and Banff National Forest. So these things don't just reside, I mean, obviously we've had Middle Eastern ones, and these parks in Canada are just huge. The Nahanni Valley, huge. Banff, huge. These giants could hide throughout there and not. And then he had recalled that time Victor said that Victor had tracked one of these things through like Idaho and into Canada or whatever. But the strangest thing of the whole experience, and the one thing that freaks him out still to this day, is, and he questions it, was it a random occurrence or a random sighting and possible attack by the Dogmen? Or did they know of this giant creature and hunt for it or whatever? And what brought our friend, and what took our friend? Was it the Dogmen or was it the giant? No one knows. But when and I said, well, how are you comfortable enough to share this with us? Are you afraid to share this? And he said, no, my family has long since passed, my mom and dad, and I did not take ownership of their property. It was sold, and he married a indigenous woman, and because he is disabled for life, he kind of fell off the grid and lives with his wife on a reservation, and a federally recognized Canadian reservation, and does not fear them coming for him there. As far as his other friends, periodically he speaks to them, but he let the two know that he does talk to the most, and because the other guy does not talk to them at all, he said, I will share this experience. And after this goes up, he's going to notify the other two and have them contact me as well. So, but yeah, the question is, were the Dogmen working with that giant, or was it a freak coincidence? I said it's kind of strange that the coincidence, for that to be a coincidence. And if the RCMP brought that thing back, which they did, more than likely the government did go back out there. The Department of National Defense did go out and hunt those things down. Did they get it? He doesn't know. Does he care? No, he doesn't. It's a part of his life that he haunts him to this day. And that was Charles's experience that he had happen in 1991 in Banff National Forest, listed as a wolf attack. And there you have it, folks. I hope you enjoyed the night's second bonus upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you for supporting the channel. It is your support that helps the channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please, everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.